Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for Junia Doan's The Spark. I'm Junia Doan. My guest today is Terry Moore. Terry served as president of MidMichigan Health for 31 years, now called MyMichigan, before retiring and writing his book, Lessons in Leadership and Career Survival. Welcome, Terry. Terry, you ran a major healthcare organization for a number of years. What are the responsibilities of a leader? And then we'll get what does it take to be a good leader?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that ought to be emphasized right up front is that it's not up to an individual. It's up to a whole team of people. And somebody once said, a general job is not to fight, it's to build an army and lead it. I was never a general. I never rose above the rank of first lieutenant, in fact. But I think one of the keys was pulling together really good people and keeping them working harmoniously as a team and trying to maximize the potential of the organization. We had 4,725 employees when I left, and we had a number of boards. We were blessed to have great boards and great positions. So I think a lot of it had to do with coordination and working with people in terms of setting goals and realizing the value of every employee, not just the management team, but all the employees. So I think that was a lot of it.
Terry, what did you look for when you hired a prospective or interviewed a prospective employee?
I wanted somebody who showed a lot of initiative. I wanted somebody that would, I thought would fit in with the rest of the team. I wanted somebody who'd be enthusiastic and have a good work ethic. That's kind of hard to determine, though, in an interview process. And so I think it was also important to have them interview with a number of people and get those individuals' feedback. I know in one situation, we had 4 medical centers. We had somebody that interviewed, he was a West Point graduate, and I thought he had the job before he came here. But when he interviewed the people up at the respective institution where we were thinking about employing him, they all said the same thing, and that is that he didn't seem to have a lot of focus, and he just didn't seem to be a fit. And so you have to listen to those people that are going to work closely with them, and consequently, we didn't hire him.
Do you think people listen to what? Is it a gestalt experience of an intuition, or it's in a dialogue of facts back and forth?
You know, that too is a good question. I think I think it's a lot of it comes down to a gut feel. That can be a little that can be a little scary because some people are looking for things that really don't matter that much sometimes. So a lot of it has to do with what kind of a fit you think we'll have. I'll give you a quick example, if I may.
Sure.
We were interviewing for a human resource director, and we interviewed 5 candidates, and we couldn't find the right. Just couldn't land on a single person. So we brought a 6th one in order to be kind of a tiebreaker and whatnot. She came in, she was super enthusiastic and so on. She was just a good fit with everybody, and we wound up subsequently hiring her. And it was just because she was so enthusiastic and she was such a good fit, and everybody had that gut feel that this is somebody we can work with and we'd like to work with.
It seems to me you might be looking for different things if it's going to be a head of accounting or versus the head of sales.
Yeah, it's true. And we were fortunate to have some really, we had a person who was really good in finance, Francine Paget, who is now over, as you probably know, the chief financial officer at the Herbert H. and Grace A. Dow Foundation. So yeah, you do look for those kinds of skills, and you know, it is somebody that's different than you have in marketing. And we had, as you know, we had an outstanding public relations marketing person in Donna Rabb.
But just give us a little sort of range of departments you have to have. How much is it like a business? But I think of a hospital, I think of customer care, so to speak. But we know it's way more complicated than that, especially in the area of regulation.
No, that's true, and it is a pretty diverse organization. Everybody's familiar with nurses. Nurses are the core of any hospital operation, and again, we had good directors of nursing. I think one of the things, and we had finance, of course, hospital. We were $1 billion in size, and so finance is important. I think one of the areas that doesn't get a lot of attention is what we call materials management. 27% of our budget came through materials management. That's buying supplies and other kinds of things for operating rooms, all kinds of other things. So materials management is also a really important one. Marketing, as you already mentioned, human resources is really important when you've got that many employees and such a diverse number of employees. So there's a breadth of specialties.
It seems with over 4,000 employees, it would be very hard to please everybody. What have you learned in your time there that helps smooth things and makes people enthusiastic, like that girl you hired?
I think a lot of it comes down to how well you treat the individuals. You have to treat everybody with respect, and I think you have to be available. You have to be on site as much as possible. Be available to people. Somebody said you can't be as effective at the course, club, or condo as you can at the workplace, and that's true. You've got to be out there with them. There was a fellow, I don't remember if you remember Don Bennett. He was at Dow Corning for a long time. He came to me shortly after I became president, and he said, Terry, there are ranchers and there are ramrods. He said, ranchers only know a cow when they see them. A ramrod knows what the cowboys are thinking and doing. He said, don't ever be a rancher. Always be a ramrod and be out there with the people. And I thought that was sage advice.
Some people like to do things and some people don't. It's just an interesting phenomenon. Do you think after all these years there and then a break now, so to speak, you've done some other things, but if you were back there now, has conditions changed so that you might be making different decisions or you might be confronting a different emphasis more than the time you were there?
That too is a great question, and not being in the saddle now, it's hard for me to say, but I will tell you, we've got a really good management team at MidMichigan Health now with Dr. Watson, Brian Cross there, Chuck Sherman. I think electronic medical records have made some challenges. Nursing recruitment and retention has always been an issue, but not like it is now. It's a huge issue. I think physicians, at the time we were there, maybe 50% of the physicians were on some kind of employment arrangement. I think more and more physicians are employed, so I think that's a bigger challenge. And the hospitals are really struggling financially. The demand is there, and the staffing shortages has necessitated them hiring agency nurses, and that's added a lot of extra expense to them. So I think the challenges, I hate to say it, I think the challenges are even greater today than they were when I was there.
And what makes management more difficult today in terms of recruitment and in terms of just what you said? I'm just taken with that it's a financial what do I want to say, crunch. I would have thought that at a minimum, if it didn't make some money, it at least broke even, whatever that means. Because I know you got a lot of donations.
I can tell you one of the things that some of what adds to the duress in terms of trying to recruit nurses, that is there's a aging population, so the demand is greater. I mean, there's more, no secret we're all getting older, and so the demand is greater. Also, in terms of nurses, I don't think people realize how many of them are getting near retirement age. I saw a statistic recently that 55% of all nurses are over the age of 50. The other thing that really enters into it is the nursing turnover rate is really great. And I think part of it is because they can go anywhere and, maybe get a raise or whatnot. Turnover rate for nurses, the last time I looked, was 27%. Now, maybe that doesn't seem high to a restaurant or some place like that, but 27% turnover is really high, and it's up 8% over the last couple of years. And the other problem is that there just aren't enough nurses. The projection is by the Bureau of Statistics is that we need 177,000 nurses a year. We're graduating 155. So it's a situation that's only going to get worse.
Is it a way? I know they have physician's assistants and different categories now. You can take additional training and then qualify. And then I don't say you're an assistant to a doctor, but maybe the first slice, the first interaction where it might have been the nurse before, or I don't know, you know better than I. The reason I'm asking this question is years ago I knew someone who was really had a big heart and followed through well at the hospital. And she applied to Central Michigan for their program and wasn't accepted. And I thought at the time, what a loss. But more particularly, maybe the need is greater and maybe the program needs to be deeper, wider.
It's really competitive. That physician assistant program I think you're talking about, that's a very competitive program. I will tell you that the number of nurse practitioners has increased significantly. There are 3 times the number of nurse practitioner graduates out there that there was 10 years ago. I think it was 30,000 this past year. So there are more of those. What I thought you might be getting at is, and maybe you were, assistance to help nurses, and that's one of the things that they are doing. I don't know whether they call them nurse aides or nurse techs now, but there are things that nurses don't have to do in terms of patient care that these people could do to help relieve the burden of the actual nurse.
There's make work and necessary work, which brings me to power. In any organization, power is there. What forms of power have you seen in your life?
Well, there's 5 kinds of power, reward power, coercive power, charismatic power, and there's an organizational power, what they call the power of the prince, that comes from your position. And people make a mistake sometimes and they misuse that power of the position. The power, one of the things about hospitals, and I'm sure you know this as well as anybody, is that it's an interesting arrangement because a lot of the doctors don't directly report to administration per se. So you have that going on. The physicians are pretty independent.
Back to the original question, it's a big group. How do you get, or any group, how do you get it going? And I think that you have to earn my respect. And that would be true of anybody, anywhere. I grant them full opportunity, and then I see how they act, or see what they do or they don't do, or say or don't say. And there are just some people you grow to trust, and some people maybe not. And but maybe I bet you know more about that than I do. And maybe you just say, for someone who's looking for a job or in a job, what advice might you have for them for handling power situations in their office or medical environment?
Well, I think the first thing they have to understand is it's not about them, okay? It's about the other people there. And if you can't get outside of yourself and really focus on these other people, and if you don't genuinely care about these other people, then they're not going to care about you. And you talk about building trust. Trust is something that takes a while to build, and it can be destroyed, almost instantly, depending on what somebody does. So it's interesting that you're focused on it. There was an interesting article in Harvard Business Review years ago about why should anybody be led by you, and a lot of it has to do with how much you care about these individuals, and do you trust them?
What's the role of ego in leadership?
I don't know. I'm not a very good psychologist, so I don't know, to be honest with you. Where I've seen it abused is where it's overdone. People are they have too much. They're too full of themselves, as somebody said. they just are they somehow think they have all the answers, and they don't listen to other people. They're not respectful of other people. They don't ask questions. They spend too much time talking about themselves. When I'm out giving presentations, one of the things I tell people is the easiest thing to do to improve your emotional intelligence is to ask questions and ask questions all the time, which is what you're doing and what you do so well at.
Well, I'm just super curious about everything. I got an extra gene or dose of it or whatever. My observation is that people can be really good, but then they fall in love with themselves some way, and their ego just shoots out and makes them not good or less good. And they don't seem to, the ones that have that issue, they don't recognize it. And that's even more interesting because how would you talk to someone who is the way they are? We're all the way we are. I mean, it's interesting.
You're 100% on. People sometimes, as they rise up, somebody said, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. As they move up, that happens. So you're spot on about that. It's hard not to turn on a television and see somebody that's really puffed up with their own importance, and subsequently they derail their career because of that.
Because people sense it and know it.
They know it. People are pretty savvy about others. I think it would scare me to know what people really think about me. Okay, people, you never really know what other people think about you.
And they may not know either. It's just in the in the moment, and they change their mind or not later. Well, you made a big transition with dedicating your life to healthcare leadership, and then moving away from that at, I guess, retirement age. And you've done other things in the community. But what did you have to learn to make that transition, or what are you still trying to learn?
That too is a really good question. There's a book out that I really recommend highly. It's by Joan Chichester. It's called The Gift of Years. And really what it's about is that when you come off the stage and instead of bemoaning that, we, as they say, we can be drunk with all the opportunities that we have to do different things. And so I really recommend this highly. I'm going to do an article. I write for the Midland Daily News, and my June article is going to be about moving on and quote some of the things out of the book. I really recommend it highly. It's a great book for anybody going through any kind of a transition. You got a choice. You can bemoan or reflect on the past. People in your past don't have time for you. They don't want to be spending time with you. They got their own issues to deal with. So you gotta, I don't want to say reinvent yourself, but you gotta move on.
What I've noticed, just personal to me, is I thought when you got to a certain place or whatever, you were there. And what I learned for myself only is there's no there. It's just the launching pad for the next dream, the next idea, the next learning experience. And it surprised me because to this day, that's the way I am. So other people have other ways to approach it, but I think to some extent, life is a learning and teaching experience if you do it well, or even not well. So that's what I did. Now, tell me about your early life. I know about the orchard, but I don't know how you came to be interested in healthcare.
The reason why is because it's what you're talking about earlier. You have a curiosity. You've always had that kind of curiosity. And I think that's one of the things that launches you into new endeavors and keeps you growing and whatnot. A lot of people don't have that, Junia. A lot of people don't have that. They get down and stuck down in a rut or mundane or whatnot. But you have that curiosity, and I really applaud that. Okay.
I've had some hard blows in my life, really hard. But basically, I think life is a gift, even though there are hard times, and you ought to cherish it while you can because, like I say, once I die, I'll miss life, And partly joke, but partly it says I relish the complexity, the nuance, the world changing by information and research. Um, I like this tension between freedom and totalitarianism, but I always try to lean towards freedom, even though right now that's not a popular notion or popular in the popular U.S. world. And I, I think actually being older gives you a different chance that I never expected, and that is not the mentor stuff where it's structured and all like that, but if a person comes up to you in a restaurant, which happened to me the other night, and shares something about something, I spent maybe 12, 15 minutes talking to her just to, what do I want to say? Not surround her with loving energy, but know that I really understood that the challenge and the emotional state she was in. Um, and I think that's what we can do. And I never thought that you don't get impacted by your experiences. It's not only the action, it's what you say. So this time, it's kind of like a flood in the house. The first time it was so traumatic because I didn't know what you did with, papers or artwork or everything. I didn't know what to do. And I was fast researching as I was trying to make decisions. But now that we've been through this 3 times, I have a certain expertise in this. And so for someone going through it the first time, I'm a resource if they're interested. And if there's not, there's no issue. And things do change anyway.
I remember when you went through it the first time, and I don't know how you've done it. I think about you often, especially with this last flood that was so devastating. I don't know how you came up after that. I mean, that had to be traumatic.
I think, Terry, it is, at first, at least for me, in this situation, it was, okay, what are my options? I can walk away from it. I can fix it. I can I don't know. I was just ruminating in shock because, of course, I wasn't in the house. My dear Sandy insisted I leave and go to a hotel, which was later evacuated because they were under threat. But once I made the decision to recreate the damage to something like it was before, then you just have to plod through the time difficulty, the complexity, technical complexity, the financial. And I think that early on, you often get choices of action. There's some things, when my brother died following heart surgery, my mother collapsed. And there's some things that are exceedingly difficult, but that's what older people are for, to help them get through it. Anyway, I'm thrilled you're asking me this because I've had people say, well, you ought to interview yourself, Junia. But I'm more of a listener than I am a talker, even though you may not believe that. And
I do believe that, and I think you have a lot of wisdom to share, Junia. One of the things I want to get out. One of the things I want to get out here before we leave, and that is, I think I've told you this. We always appreciated, Carlene and I always appreciated how kind you and Ted were to us. You were the second people to ever invite us into your home. We didn't mean anything to you, but you had us over, gave us a wonderful meal, and treated us like family. And I can't tell you how much that meant to us at the time, and it still does.
appreciate that. Anyway, we have a lot to learn from Terry, and that is know what you're doing, be a leader, be present, listen to people, walk around, know when things don't fit right, and keep going, as in that 6th interview. And also, I think just from observing you over the years, you were there a lot, Terry. Morning, noon, and night, you were present so people could talk to you. And the idea that there's life after a job that was all engrossing and gave such satisfaction, I hope, I know, is useful. It's useful because sometimes people don't know what to do with themselves. And I don't want it to be, as some man once told me, I'm just waiting to die. That's not the way to live. Live with optimism and enjoyment and satisfaction and connection to people. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. Do something kind for someone you know and someone you don't know every day. Thank you, Terry.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadonsthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadonthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.